Get ready to smack your chest and debate whether there was room on that raft. I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of Céline Dion, My Heart Will Go On.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
It's a struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
Everybody told me in the industry, I've heard that so much that, oh, the music industry is changing so much. You know, Céline, we don't know about ballads anymore. Like, what are you talking to me about that? You want me to do a rap album or something? Like, don't get me wrong, I love the rap music, but can you imagine me do, hey, yo, what's up?
That was not bad.
Can you really imagine me, like, go, Céline Dion, Toronto, represent?
Well, you know what? Maybe next time.
Can you imagine Céline Dion as a rapper? I'm actually kind of into the idea. But I am here to talk about what Canada's greatest singer of all time does best. Ballads. Specifically, one ballad. Arguably, the most iconic ballad of the past 30 years. Yeah, I'm talking about My Heart Will Go On, or as some people call it, the Titanic song, because in 1997 and 98, My Heart Will Go On and Titanic were basically intertwined. You couldn't really talk about one without the other. And despite everything Céline Dion has accomplished in her incredible career, which spans 45 years, if you can believe it, My Heart Will Go On is without a doubt the song that everybody knows by her. And if you don't know it by her, you might know it by Eric Cartman, who sang a parody of it on South Park. I won't say why he sings it or even what the title of the episode was, but yes, Céline Dion is a memorable part of the South Park universe. So in a nutshell, she is quite special. But from her very birth, Céline Dion was quite special. The 14th child in her family, born just outside of Montreal, Quebec, in the wee town of Charlemagne, Céline arrived 6 years after her youngest sibling. So fun fact, Céline's oldest sibling, Denise, was 22 years older than her and actually pregnant at the time her mom was expecting Céline. So technically, Céline was an aunt at birth. With so many children, the Dions struggled to make ends meet. As a baby, Céline actually slept in the drawer of a cabinet because there was no money to buy a crib. The rest of her siblings were sprawled across the family's 4-bedroom house, which only had one bathroom, by the way. Her brother Jacques would tell People magazine, there was one room for the 5 boys, and we all slept in the same double bed. We stretched out 3 one way and 2 another. I had the toes of my brother in my nose. The 9 girls had 3 bedrooms between them. Some of them slept 2 to a bed. But it didn't matter because her family provided a loving environment for young Céline, where her siblings were involved in her upbringing. These same siblings, as well as her parents, were musicians, which helped Céline develop an appetite for music at a very young age. Here she is telling Much Music how her family influenced her love for music.
I have a very, 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 very big family. 13 brothers and sisters. My parents are musicians. They were doing some tours in the province of Quebec with members of my family, with my brothers and sisters. And they were doing some folk music and, I was following my parents on tour. So I just grew up almost on stage. I was almost born on stage. It's like it's the only thing I know.
Céline first performed in public at her brother's wedding when she was only 5. But by the age of 10, she was performing at the piano bar her parents had opened. It was at that moment that she realized music wouldn't just be a passion or even career. It would be her life.
A couple of years after that, my parents had a bar with a restaurant. And sometimes, with their permission, I was asking my parents to sing on the weekends. And one of my brothers was playing piano, and I was singing there. And it's really at that time that I realized that singing was my life. So I said to my mother, please, I want to sing. Help me. This is what I want to do. And she wrote my first song. And one of my brother and me wrote the music at home with a guitar, a little tape cassette, very simple.
That song was called Ce n'était qu'un rêve, and Céline was only 12 years old when she made her first recording. In case you're wondering, in English, the song title translated to It Was Only a Dream, which couldn't have been more appropriate. Thanks to her brother, her dream was about to come true.
Actually, one of my favorite singers at that time was Jeanette Renaud. And my brother just looked behind the record, and it was written, produced by Renee Angelil, and the address. So he sent the cassette to him, and the manager called, and he said, I would like to see Céline. So I was 12 years old, and I went to the office with my mother, and he just asked me to sing in front of him. He said, can you sing a cappella? No. I said, well, I'm used to sing with him, and I was very, very shy. Anyway, I sang in front of him.
What did you sing?
The song, the same song, the song that my mother...
Give me 2 lines.
Dans un grand jardin enchanté.
Renee Angelil was a former pop singer himself who started his career in the early 1960s and eventually transitioned into artist management and producing records. Upon first meeting Céline, Renee was taken by the adolescent singer. He gave her a microphone and told her to sing like she was in front of a sold-out crowd. Céline would tell People magazine, while I was singing, he started to cry. I knew then I had done a good job. Renee had just been dropped by his biggest client, Reno, so he was extra determined to make young Céline a star. So determined, it almost ruined him financially. Renee put everything he had into helping Céline take off, and by that, I mean everything. Like he mortgaged his house to help finance studio sessions for Céline that resulted in her first 2 albums, La Voix de Bon Dieu and Céline Dion Chant Noël, a Christmas album featuring French versions of holiday standards, my favorite title of which is Le Petit Renne au Nez Rouge, aka Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Also, hopefully I'm pulling this French off, okay? I graduated with intensive French in high school, but since then, I have only used it un peu. Well, the gamble paid off for Renee. Both albums were hits in Quebec, and it didn't take long for word to spread around the world. At the age of 14, she was invited to perform at the Yamaha World Popular Song Festival in Tokyo, which was televised in front of 115 million viewers. 14 years old, 115 million viewers. Think about that. Céline ended up winning both the award for Top Performer and the gold medal for Best Song. The next year, she made it big in France, appearing on the popular TV program Champs-Élysées and eventually becoming the first Canadian to reach gold-selling status in France. Back home in Canada, she would clean up at the Félix Awards, taking home Newcomer of the Year, Artist of the Year, achieving the most success outside Quebec, Female Vocalist of the Year, and Pop Album of the Year for Tellement J'ai d'amour. Then, on September 11th, 1984, she performed for Pope John Paul II at Olympic Stadium in Montreal in front of 60,000 people. Céline was, how do you say on fire in French? En feu? And she was still only 16 years old. By the time she was 17, Céline had released 7 albums, including 2 Christmas albums. She was averaging at least 1 album a year. Think about that. Imagine your favorite artist putting out a new album every year. After winning 5 more Félix Awards in 1985, Céline and Renee felt she needed a break, so she stepped out of the limelight for 18 months. Now, it was around this time that Céline reportedly had dental surgery to correct some of her teeth, which she had been teased about ever since she was a young child. Kids would call her Vampire or Canine Dion. God, kids are ruthless, creative, but ruthless. But Céline overcame the name-calling. When she emerged from her time away in 1987, she was ready to go in full force. In that time off, she had signed an international deal with CBS Records, the same label as Michael Jackson, whose career Céline wanted for herself. Her 8th album, titled Incognito, saw a new Céline appear, a confident young woman who at the age of 19 sported a new look and a new sound. A new team of songwriters and producers also came aboard to help distinguish Céline from her past music, giving the songs a mature and adult tone to them, and her fans loved it. Incognito would not only go double platinum in Canada, it also sold 500,000 copies elsewhere in the world. A funny thing happened at the 1987 Juno Awards, however. Céline performed, but she didn't sing in French. She sang in English. The song was called Have a Heart, and it had the entire music industry talking. Céline then got a boost in Europe when she entered the popular Eurovision Song Contest representing Switzerland, despite not being Swiss. So why was that allowed? Because the song she sang, Ne partez pas sans moi, was composed by Swiss songwriters. In the final, Céline won by 1 point over Britain's Scott Fitzgerald. Years later, Céline would explain how and why she chose to participate in Eurovision.
First of all, they came to me and they asked me to represent a country that's not even mine. No pressure. Can you represent our country, please? I was very young still, but the song was amazing. And the way I cope with that is that I didn't feel and I didn't want to see that as I'm representing everybody. Of course, I was not going to let nobody down. I went and I sang my heart out the best I could, and it started my career so wonderfully well. So it was a great time. And thank you for the question, Shane. Thank you.
Winning Eurovision and raising her profile in Europe led her management and label to decide it was time for the next step in her career: global domination. How would they do it? Get Céline to finally sing in English. Before Céline Dion could break into the English-speaking market, she had to brush up on her language skills. Here she is telling Much Music about going back to school.
Well, when I started to perform in Quebec, I was 15 years old. And I was singing in English also, but I couldn't understand what I was singing because I couldn't speak English at that time. I speak English only for 3 years and a half.
Really?
Yeah. But I went to school though. I went to school at Berlitz School for 2 months. All day, 9 to 5, 5 days a week for 2 months. Very intensive courses because I wanted to learn. Yeah. I wanted to sing and I wanted to understand. And I want not only singing, I want also to, because I love people. I like talking with them and sharing something with them. So I wanted to go to school and learn the language.
Originally, the idea was to re-record English vocals for Incognito and re-release it. However, the more the label saw Céline sing, the more they raised the studio budget. Soon, they were convinced that she should sing new songs and make a whole new album. With her newfound grasp of English, Céline Dion stepped into the studio with a team of new producers, including Canadian legend producer David Foster, who had worked with George Harrison, Hall & Oates, Aretha Franklin, and Neil Diamond. When he took the job, the budget was $300,000, but once Foster got involved, he convinced CBS to double it. Soon, she was flying off to New York, London, and Los Angeles to record. Released on April 2nd, 1990, Unison introduced a 22-year-old Céline Dion to the English-speaking public. The album's third single, Where Does My Heart Beat Now?, was a worldwide hit, reaching number 6 in Canada and number 4 in the U.S. While Céline was becoming a star in the U.S. and the rest of the world, she was still releasing music in French. Seriously, when did she sleep? Even though her French fans felt neglected when she began focusing a lot of her time on breaking the English market, her 1991 album, D'un Chant Plamondant, went gold the day it was released in Quebec and spawned a massive hit in France with the song Un garçon pas comme les autres. Again, hopefully I'm pulling off this French, okay? I'm trying. But Céline kept working both sides. She won big at the Junos, claiming Female Vocalist of the Year and Album of the Year. Then at the Félix Awards, she won English Artist of the Year, but refused to accept the honor, stating that she was a French artist first. Even with all of this success, no one could have expected what happened next. Céline Dion was asked to sing the theme song to Disney's animated feature film, Beauty and the Beast. The song was a duet with R&B singer Peabo Bryson, who, believe it or not, had the bigger name of the two artists. Céline was selected as an affordable option to sing the words of the titular character Belle. Needless to say, when it was released in late 1991, both Beauty and the Beast, the movie, and the song were massive hits. The duo took home Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals at the Grammys, Single of the Year at the Junos, and both a Golden Globe and Academy Award for Best Original Song. Overnight, Céline Dion had become a household name around the world. Beauty and the Beast was the first single for Céline's second English-language album, simply titled Céline Dion. Released on March 30th, 1992, Céline Dion, the album, featured a number of different producers and songwriters, including Diane Warren and Prince. Yes, Prince loved Céline's voice so much, he wrote her a song called With This Tear. She publicly acknowledged the gesture, telling Prince, With This Tear is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard or felt. Thank you for the honor. The album went top 3 in Canada, top 40 in the US, and sold more than 5 million copies. Céline scored more hits with the songs If You Ask Me To and Love Can Move Mountains, which she was asked to sing at Bill Clinton's first presidential inauguration in 1993. Now, around this time, Céline and Renee decided to go public with their relationship, already having been engaged for 2 years. The two had reportedly started dating 6 years earlier when she was 19 and he was 45. She would later tell Access Hollywood that it was maybe at 17, 18 years old, my feelings started to change for him. I kind of saw him differently. With its theme of romance, the two used Céline's next album, titled The Color of My Love, to officially announce their love for one another. Fans and the media were fascinated by the couple, however, there wasn't much scrutiny. Céline would later tell CBS News her love for Renee began when she first met him, admitting, I fell in love with him immediately. Not in the romance way. I was 12 years old. I was in love with the way he treated everyone around me, including my whole family and myself. Released on November 8, 1993, The Color of My Love catapulted Céline into music's upper echelon. The album would go number 1 in Canada and the UK, reaching number 4 in the US. Céline would gain even more attention when she sang the album's second single, The Power of Love, on a gala for the president, the televised tribute to Bill Clinton. The Color of My Love would be her biggest album yet, selling more than 6 million copies in the US, 2 million in Canada, and reached number 1 in several countries. And yes, your mother, likely even grandmother, has a copy on her CD stand. No need to check, just trust me, I know. On December 17, 1994, 1 week after returning from her final show on the tour, Céline married the love of her life, René Angélil, in Montreal at the Notre Dame Basilica. To quote her website, it was a wedding fit for a princess, as spectacular as it was sincere. But getting married did not slow her down. Céline had another new album ready to go a few months later titled Deux, her 13th studio album. Céline was a workhorse. Whenever she released an album in English, she would follow it right up with an album in French. That, folks, is how you stay true to your roots. But Deux wasn't just a new Céline Dion album. It was an absolute juggernaut. It debuted at number 1 in France and stayed there for 44 straight weeks, so almost a whole year. To this very day, Deux is still the best-selling French-language album of all time, with more than 12 million copies sold. Magnifique! One would think this would earn Céline some time off, but almost 1 year to the day she released Deux, Céline returned with an English album called Falling Into You, featuring bangers like It's All Coming Back to Me Now, Because You Loved Me, and a cover of All By Myself. Falling Into You, if you can believe it, made Céline even bigger worldwide. The album, which featured the handiwork of Diane Warren and David Foster, went on to sell 32 million copies, and it reached number 1 in 11 countries. I think they do call that world domination, which was what they were looking for. It wasn't just her fans buying it, though. Falling Into You won Grammys for Pop Album of the Year and Album of the Year. A funny thing about its success, though, despite selling over 1 million copies in France, the album initially debuted at number 2 in the country. And that's only because Deux was still selling so well that it remained at number 1. Céline would end up singing The Power of the Dream from Falling Into You at the opening ceremonies of the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, because really, who better to do it? Somehow, though, becoming the most famous singer in the world was only the tip of the iceberg. See what I did there? Céline Dion kicked off 1997 the way any of us would, by becoming the first artist ever to perform 2 songs at the Oscars. She performed Because You Loved Me from Up Close and Personal, and I Finally Found Someone from The Mirror Has Two Faces. She stepped in because Natalie Cole was ill. I mean, what can't Céline do? This was also all just a precursor to what would become the biggest year of her life. While all of this was going on, there was a big blockbuster movie in the works. It was a love story set aboard the Titanic, the British luxury passenger liner that famously sank in April 1912. Canadian filmmaker James Cameron was directing the $200 million film, which was in fear of sinking both 20th Century Fox and Paramount Pictures. Composer James Horner was responsible for the film's score, which Sony Music would be releasing as the soundtrack. The thing was, the label expected some kind of pop song to appear on the album. Horner wrote an instrumental piece of music that fit with the score and could be played at the end of the film. he brought in the lyricist Will Jennings to write, who titled it My Heart Will Go On. Now, originally, the idea was to have Norwegian singer Sissel Kyrkjebø sing the song, since she had already contributed vocals to Horner's score. But Horner was a fan of Céline Dion, and having previously missed out on working with Céline before, he felt that he owed the song to her. And so he met with Céline and Renee at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas and did his best to sing them the song. But initially, Céline wasn't interested. Here she is recounting that moment to CNN's Larry King.
I think it's an amazing song. But
Renee
when I was offered the
camera.
song and it was played to me, and James Horner came and it was like playing the song to me, and I don't know what happened to me that day. I didn't think it was for me. And the way he was playing the piano and Renee was like, you know what we're going to do? He said, let me ask Céline to do a demo. And then I knew, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do a demo. And then
she would tell Billboard, I wanted to choke my husband because I didn't want to do it. I just came out of Because You Loved Me, and then Beauty and the Beast was like huge. Why do we need to break our nose? But Renee heard something special in Horner's song, so Céline went into a Hit Factory studio in New York and took direction from the composer, who explained to her what the film was about. Now, according to Céline, she was getting her period and she admitted to having belly pains, but that didn't stop her from belting out the song and leaving virtually everyone in the studio, Renee, James Horner, and the Sony music reps, in tears. She friggin' devastated them, cramps and all. But here's the thing. Actually, you know what? I'll let Céline tell you.
Make a long story short, went for a demo, and I never re-sang the song because the actual recording,
the demo is what
the
they
demo
used?
is what we used. They just built the orchestra
Were you
around it.
shocked
I'm
at
so
how...
glad I was wrong. I'm so glad you insisted.
Were you
Thank
shocked at how big it got?
Yes, you heard her correctly. Céline Dion recorded the vocal to My Heart Will Go On in just one take. Tommy Mottola, who was then the head of Sony Music Entertainment, also confirmed that she only sang the vocals once. And this is, I will admit right now, the most shocking thing I have learned doing this podcast so far. I gasped. Now, for Céline, recording another song for another movie wasn't really on her list of things to do. Yes, Beauty and the Beast, it helped raise her profile internationally, and yes, she had been nominated for many awards both in music and film for her work. But her decision to actually put her name on the song really just came down to how she felt about Titanic, the movie.
I was a little afraid to do another song for a movie, but when I saw the movie, I said, never mind what's going to happen, what people think. It's so good. I need that in my repertoire, in my life. I needed to do it for me. And then everybody opened their hearts in it and they're crazy for it.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is that director James Cameron, the man behind the movie, really had final say as to what music made it into the film. He believed Titanic was good enough on its own, and he did not want to squeeze some pop song into this epic motion picture he was making. Cameron was worried it would make his product too commercial, which is just funny when you think of the film in 2025. But really, he didn't want the song. Here is James Cameron explaining in a Titanic Live interview about how My Heart Will Go On made it into his film.
I'm listening to this thing. First 2 bars is kind of an eye roll. Oh, crap, he's pushing a pop song. Then I started to listen to it, and I really liked the lyrics, and I liked the song, and I liked the way it was sung. It was a demo. And so it's all done. And I said, and by the time it finished, I had made my decision during the song. I didn't have to hear it again. And he said, well, what do you think? I said, this can be as big as I Will Always Love You from The Bodyguard. This song can be that big. And we're going to put it at the end of the film. And he said, well, do you recognize the voice? And I said, no, but I don't really know pop singers. He said, it's Céline Dion. And I said, oh, well, she's kind of big, right?
So yes, James Cameron didn't even know who was singing when he first heard My Heart Will Go On. But can you imagine if he had said no? Because upon its release, My Heart Will Go On was massive. It was a colossal, gigantic, huge, mammoth smash hit. Officially released on November 24th, 1997, My Heart Will Go On was just everywhere. On the radio, on Much Music and MTV, and of course in movie theaters playing at the end of Titanic, which went on to gross more than $2 billion at the box office, making it the highest grossing film of all time. It was later surpassed by another James Cameron film, Avatar. But Titanic was the champion for 13 years. My Heart Will Go On went to number 1 in more than 25 countries. It's actually pretty funny when you check out the charts section of the song's Wikipedia page, because almost every country's chart has a 1 next to it, and you don't see that very often. But yes, it sold a lot of copies, 18 million in fact, making it the best-selling single of 1998 and the second best-selling single by a woman in music history, behind only Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, another movie song and just another devastating banger. But wait, it also helped sell more than 27 million copies of the Titanic soundtrack and Celine's next album, Let's Talk About Love, which came out the same week as Titanic. The album sold even more copies, 31 million to be exact. As one might expect, My Heart Will Go On also won Celine many awards. There were 4 Grammys for Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and Best Song written specifically for a motion picture or for television. The people in those categories with her must have just been like, well, we lost. It also won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, and she absolutely nailed her performance at the Oscars, because of course she did. She's only been preparing for this since she was 5. Simply put, it won basically every single award it was nominated for. By the way, Celine herself admits that she never expected My Heart Will Go On would have any of this success. I mean, she must have expected some of it, but here she is telling Much More Music all about it.
Did you have any hint or any gut feeling or instinct about how big the Titanic was going to be? And how
I wish to be that smart. You see, I wish to be that smart. Come say, wait, we're coming about something. It's going to break your heart and it's going to be the biggest hit of all time. No, I didn't know, but I knew we had something very special. How special? How big? How much of a success? Of course not. I couldn't tell.
Since its release 28 years ago, My Heart Will Go On has become the Céline Dion song. It's her signature, and she's had so many hits, but none bigger than this one. Just this year, My Heart Will Go On was inducted into the National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress for preservation, getting recognized for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I'm not 100% sure, but that might be the one and only song featured on Encore to receive that honor. While it's a pretty tough song to sing, a couple of pop music's biggest voices have covered the song in recent years. Ariana Grande, of course, sang it on The Late Late Show with James Corden. Even more interesting is Bruno Mars, who opened up his shows performing My Heart Will Go On for his residency at MGM in Las Vegas. Now, because it's such a heart-wrenching tearjerker, the song also began to trend in 2023 following the tragic implosion of the OceanGate Titan. I guess people drew comparisons to the Titanic disaster, and so My Heart Will Go On received a significant bump on Spotify with more than 500,000 streams in the immediate wake of the tragedy. I will leave you with one final thought, because it's likely been on your mind as soon as I started talking about Titanic. The door. Even after all this time, it's still a hot topic to debate. Was there enough room on the door for Jack, or was Rose just hogging it? Well, Celine has her opinion, and Jimmy Fallon asked her about it.
Here's what everyone's saying, and this is still being talked about on the internets, on the interwebs. They're saying at the end of the movie, if Rose just scooted over a little bit, just a little bit, just over here, she could have saved Jack's life. Do you agree with this?
Don't put me in trouble.
No, come on! America needs to know.
What if they want to do a Titanic number 2?
No, you can't do a Titanic number 2.
It's true.
No, you can't.
Listen. First of all, if you look closely to the picture, Rose is maybe dead or totally frozen, and she's not quite all there. Okay? Second of all, he doesn't need an invitation. Come on, baby. Make yourself comfortable. Jump in.
Yeah.
You know?
He could have
And then,
pushed her over a little bit.
Who did not think about this guy who's in the middle of the frozen ocean and that maybe all his body is so frozen that he didn't have the strength to jump in for my love.
Oh my God.
Jump
in. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well said, Celine. I'm Ruby Carr. I hope you were as fascinated with the story behind Céline Dion, My Heart Will Go On, as I was. New episodes of Encore every Thursday, near, far, wherever you are.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you so much for coming.